Hi, welcome to Azzadous Studios. In part 2 of my How to Make Beats series, I'll be adding an 808 and putting together some chords. Stay tuned. Welcome back to my How to Make Beats series. In part 1, we looked at selecting samples and piecing together a drum beat. I want to start off part 2 by quickly running back through this and making some tweaks. So we've got our drum beat here that we created in part 1. The only tweaks I'm wanting to make is a couple of percussion tweaks. I feel like, although I like the skippy sort of beat, I feel like it is a little bit crowded now, or at least for the time being. So I'm going to take this percussion sound out here. It may not need to be taken out completely, maybe just moving it about might help, but for now I'm going to take it out. If you press 0 on the number pad on your keyboard, it actually deactivates the selected notes. So if I do want them back in, I could just highlight them again, press 0 again, and it will reactivate them. I think you can do that by right clicking. Yeah, there we go, activate notes, and then deactivate notes. This just means that if you want to trial something by switching it off, but you don't want to lose it, especially if you've got like quite a lot of notes, you can switch it on and off quite easily without having to delete it all and put it all back in again. Okay, so this percussion at the top, I'm going to turn this down a bit more. I just want it ever so slightly coming in, you know, just adding a little bit, not too predominant in the sound. So for now, I think I'm going to leave the beat like that and get on to what part 2 is about. So first of all, I'm going to add an 808, and I'm just going to use this to fatten up the kick. At this moment in time, we're not going to look at bass. Although the 808 does add bass, it's not like a bass line that we're going to want. Or it could be, depending how minimal you want, but later on we're going to look at adding a bass line. So with the 808, I've got a preset that I've created, which is just an 808 with a gate. I'll run you through this now. So in operator, what I'll do is I'll recreate it for you. So we'll grab operator, and then you want to switch D, C and B off, just keep A. You want sine wave, that's fine, everything should be fine there. We want to switch pitch envelope on, and raise that up a little bit. You can hear it starts it has that pitch drop at the start, which you'd hear in an 808. What I'm going to do is go back over to A and raise the release. About 1.7 seconds is fine for now. We'll tweak that in a bit. The next thing I'm going to do is go over to filter and change the shaper to hard. You can really hear it coming through there. So bring the dry wet down. That gives you quite a noticeable pitch drop, and it's quite a hard hitting sound. What I'm going to do is change it over to soft now, show you the difference. Quite different, a lot, as it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a lot softer. I'm going to leave it on soft because for this we're going to just fatten up the kick, so I don't want too much distortion in the 808. So another thing that I usually do is click over to the time section at the bottom here, and I'll change the voices to 1. This just helps if you've got different notes in the bass. So when one note is still playing, if you play another note, it'll stop the first note from playing. Otherwise, with it being a bass sound, it gets quite muddy. So you might have 2 notes playing over each other a little bit when they're ringing out, especially when you've got a long release time. So that's why I like to do that. In some instances, it can be beneficial to have more voices on, but for now, we're going to keep it on 1. Okay, so next, I'm going to go over to audio effects, and I'm going to add a utility. Actually, there is already one. If you open up new utility, there is a mono utility there. If you just drag that in, that's fine. That's all you need. That basically just makes sure the bass is slap bang in the center, completely mono. And then we're going to add a gate. So what I'm going to do is highlight all of these, holding shift and clicking each one. Right click and group, and there you've got your 808 group with gate. I'll show you how to set up the gate now. You want to click the little arrow next to gate to open up the sidechain box, and we want to sidechain this from the kick, so the kick will be triggering the 808. So we'll go to audio from drum rack, and then we want to choose the kick from within the drum rack. So within there we've got 3 selections for kick 8: pre-effects, post-effects and post-mixer. So pre-effects is before any effects, any VSTs that are on the kick. We've not put any on yet anyway. Post-effects is after the effects, and post-mixer is after the volume control, which is over here. So for now, we're going to use pre-effects so that when we do put any effects on the kick, it doesn't affect the gate. Okay, so as a shortcut, what I'm going to do is copy this MIDI clip over to the 808. The easiest way to do this is hold Control, click, and drag without letting go of Control. Let go of the click, and it'll copy it over. So we'll open this. As you can see, there's a lot more selections now that it's not in the drum rack. In the drum rack, it only gives you selections for the samples that you've put in. In here, we've now got a full MIDI piano roll. And what we're going to do with this is we only want the kick. So the kick was C1 at the bottom, so we're going to delete all of that. And we're going to get rid of this ghost note, and we're going to choose a key. I think I like the sound of G. It might be a little bit. That should be okay. We'll tweak that a little bit now. Ah, there we go. So the gate's actually doing its job, but we need to tweak that. So I'll bring the return up quite high and the release up. If you're struggling to hear what the 808 is doing, it might be because you're not on headphones or a pair of studio monitors. It can be quite hard to hear sub frequencies on anything like a phone or a laptop speaker. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this ghost note as well. Okay, so what I've done there is just tweak the release so that we've got quite a short note playing through. So with the drum beat, so now we've got the 808 is just emphasizing that kick. What I will do here is just to bring up the level a little bit, I'm going to add a I was going to use an MV2, but I want to try and keep this. No, what I'll do, yeah, I'll add an MV2. I was going to try and keep this as minimal as possible without using too many outside of the Ableton VSTs, external VSTs. But if I was to do that, I wouldn't be able to show you how I actually go at it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna use the MV2, and this is a Waves plugin that I use for my basses. It's a compressor, and basically it gives you really great results with, like, as you can see, there's just 3 level faders here. So I'm just going to bring up the low a bit. We might want a little bit less pitch envelope because we don't need much of a pitch drop. So if we solo the kick on the drum rack using the solo button here, that will only play the kick throughout this whole MIDI clip. So you can hear the ghost kicks before the 808 comes in as well. That's fine. You don't need to emphasize every single one. I'm only going for the main kicks. I could even edit this last one. So if I take the first one out, it doesn't sound bad. Sounds okay. I'm going to leave it in for now though. And what I'm going to do now is I'll switch the kick, unsolo the kick. I'll go back to the 808 and I'm just going to add a bit of EQ just to tidy up the high frequencies, because we don't really need anything above a certain point. So I'm going to choose a slope of about 24. So you can hear there above 100 we've got frequencies that we don't particularly need, maybe a little bit of them, but as you saw there was a little bit of a click. So this will minimize that. We're going to drop it out at about, let's say, 160. So we're just getting the bass. We can tweak this more later. I'm not going to go too in depth with EQ, compression, anything like that. We are going to go right back into the drum beat and EQ everything, compress, add reverb, delay, other VSTs, you know, other effects to get it sounding really tight. The reason I've not gone at that yet is because I like to keep the creativity and the technical side kind of separate. Otherwise you get sort of bogged down with EQing and compressing that you lose your sight of where you're going with your track. What I find I do anyway. So I like to try and keep it as creative as I can for as long as possible until I'm at a point where I'm thinking, right, what this track needs now is tightening up some EQ, some more precise EQ, compression, stuff like that. Aside from the compression and EQ that I've already used, but this is more creative. It's a more creative use of the EQ and compression rather than a sort of mixing, mastering sort of side. So for now, we're going to stray away from that, and in a later video, we'll look at that. So we're going to add some pads or some sort of melody line, something in the not a melody as such, but something to go with it. I'm going to open up Anna 2. If you don't have this, don't worry. You can use any sort of VST you want. You know, any sort of synth. I'm using this because I really like the sound of it, and it gives me great results from minimal work. I can just stick a few presets on, tweak them a little bit, and that's it. For this video, we might look at tweaking the preset a little bit, but as I say, if you haven't got this, most of them work the same, but if you haven't got this, it might be a bit confusing. So just keep it, open up a synth that you like or that you have, and choose a nice preset. I'm just going to the keys category on this, and I'm going to choose like a nice sort of piano. We'll try the Anna Grand. So we're in the key of G with our sub. And I'm just going to play some. That's a bit too bright. Okay, so I think that is a G minor with the added 9. We've got G down at the bottom, and then A sharp, D, and G again. So it's a kind of inverted, yeah. The G is just brought up on top of the chord rather than at the bottom. So the name of the chord, and that's not important, but just for your own reference. Okay, thinking something like that just to fill it out a little bit. I feel like I may need to slow this down a bit because I can't play as quickly as you might think. We'll try though. Got it wrong straight away. So another way you can record, which might make it easier if you're using a MIDI keyboard and you don't want to stray too far away to use the mouse, is by clicking F9 on the keyboard, and that'll count you in. I think it'll count you in, yeah, only if you've got the metronome set. So if you've got your metronome set to count in 1 bar, that's what I have it on. You can change the sound and everything, but I just use it on what it's on. You don't need the metronome on, but it'll still count you in. If you have the metronome on, it'll click over the beat, but if you've got a beat in, you don't really need it. Okay, so just very quickly, that's in. If you open up that You could also type the write the chords in yourself, just by clicking. But I find it's a lot quicker and easier if you can play a little bit. You don't. It's absolutely not necessary at all, but I find it easier. So what I'm going to do is select all of these notes, and I'm just going to right click and quantize. Before I quantize, I'm going to check the quantize settings. So at the moment, I've got it on 1/16 and a 16th triplet. I don't really need the triplet at the moment, so I'm just going to put it back to 1/16. And I'm just going to tidy these up a bit. These bottom notes could be... I want them all to ring out. And we're going to turn the volume down a bit. So I'm going to extend all of these so that they finish just before the next note starts. Right, now we've got something in, I'm going to tweak the sound. So it's quite nice as a piano. So Azzadous 2 uses a sampler as well, which is nice. It's got 3 wavetables and 3 samplers. I've not got that much into it yet to actually make my own presets and stuff on it. I've tweaked stuff and I've created a couple, but I don't know that much about it. But it's a nice piece of kit. So we're going to leave that for now. Turn it down a bit. And then, again, not trying to stray away from the creative side too much, but I need to use some EQ just to roll off the lows. So we don't need too much of a harsh slope. I'd say a maximum of 18 dB, but I'm going to leave it on 12 for now. And just holding the headphone button, you can slide up and hear exactly what you're cutting out. And letting go will show you what the sound now sounds like. Yeah, let's try 18. 127, around there, that sounds nice. We don't want to cut out too much of the lows in this sound because, as you remember, we don't have much bass in at the moment. We've only got the 808 over the kick. So another thing that I'm going to do is on the 808, we're going to take a compressor. Now, I'm using the Live 8 compressor because it's better for side chaining, I find, than the newer compressor in Live 10 or... Yeah, so you can download this. I forget, I've had it for quite a while now. I forget where you can download it from, but it should just work straight away. You can I think you download it and you put it into a certain folder. I'll see if I can find a explanation or the folders where you need to put it, and I'll put a link to it in the description below. If not, I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure you'll be able to find it if you Google Live 8 compressor into Ableton 10. So with the sidechain, just to add to that, you can use the newer compressor, but I just feel like it does add some clicks and pops sometimes when you're sidechaining. And what we're going to do here is sidechain from the kick back to the... So we're using the kick to trigger the gate, which triggers the 808, but then we're going to sidechain the 808 from the kick, so that when the kick does trigger the 808, it also ducks out of the way a little bit of the kick, so that we don't get too much of a build-up of bass in that particular frequency. So we're going to select the drum rack again, and the second one down we want the kick 8 pre-effects. And look ahead, I usually choose 10 milliseconds, knee is fine on 0. I go over to the waveform section, and ratio I'll put about just over 2 for now, and we'll tweak that in a second. So let's switch this piano off. So you can hear it making an effect already. Just ducking out of the way a little bit, just out of the way of the kick. All this is going to do is make it easier later when we come to mixing and mastering, because we're going to have a more level sound, which means you can squeeze a bit more out of it, and it just sounds less muddy as well. I'm going to change that sound out. So that's quite a nice sound. And what I did there is, originally the filter envelope was limiting it a bit, so it was a bit more clicky. So I'm bringing the filter envelope up, which helps it ring out a little bit more. Amp envelope will also do the same thing. So the attack is changing how quickly the sound starts. So we could automate that for like an intro sort of little thing. It sounds quite nice coming in from nothing, just fading in. And then when the beat hits, something like that. We're going to leave that for now, but something to think about. So I'm going to tweak these notes a little bit. It sounds a bit flat, a bit boring. What I did there is just leveled out the volume. So if you select all of them, if for instance this one is a lower volume than the rest due to recording different notes, or if you press them a little bit harder on the keyboard, what you can do is select all, and if you select the volume at the bottom, drag it all the way up so all of them are maxed, and then take it down to where you want your level. So about there's fine, and then all of them are the same volume. You don't have to do this, and you can go more in depth with it and start actually changing the volumes yourself if you want a bit more variety. We might do that later, but for now, for this sound, we're fine like that. So I actually think that's okay. I feel like it's missing something, but that might be the bass. Once we add a bass over this and start moving it about, it should sound nicer. So the next thing I want to do is add some sort of pad. And again, I'm going to grab Anna 2. As you can see, I really like this synth. I'm just going to go to the pads section. So what I'm going to do there is alternate between a few notes from within that G minor add 9 chord. I'm going to start with basically just a G minor. Let's bring up a MIDI clip. That's Control Shift and M after highlighting this section. So let's drag that up a bit. So starting off with a G minor, we've got A sharp, D, and G. I'll drag it up a little bit more. Right, so A sharp, D, and G. So I'm just going to drag that out for the first bar. And then copy it over, duplicate it, because the only note we're actually changing, I believe, is the A down to A sharp down to the A. Sometimes what I find is just changing the pulse width on the oscillator up the top here can make quite a nice difference. In this sense, for this one, just changing it on oscillator 1, it just sort of takes away that MIDI sort of sound a little bit. But I quite like it about halfway, just under 45%. So again, grab an EQ. Although I said before about trying to stray away from too much of the technical side, this is more something you get used to, just slapping an EQ on and, you know, checking it over for frequencies and isolating it really. So we don't want any lows, and there's not much high in there, but we're going to cut the highs as well. About there. And then what we're going to do is duplicate this. So right click the channel, duplicate, and I'm going to pattern the first. Let's label these tracks first. So call the top one drums, 808, piano, pad, and we're going to call it pad left and pad right. So with pad left, for now we're going to pan it left about 35, and then pad right we're going to do the same but to the right 35. And what we're going to do is with pad right, I'm going to try shifting these up. Sorry, undo that. So select all, hold shift and press the up key. That knocks it up an octave. So we might have cut that out. No, it's just quite low in that frequency. I think it might be... the samples it's using for that preset that's keeping it quite low. So what we'll try is knock it down 2. So that's again select all, hold shift, press down twice on the arrow keys, and that knocks it down 2 octaves. Okay, so that's nice. So if you hold control and click the solo keys, you can solo more than one channel at a time. So I don't want them panned hard left and hard right, that's 50 left and 50 right, because I still want a little bit of the other sound. So the right we've got a lower sound, and the left we've got an octave up. I still want the sounds to play through both speakers, but I just want it separated a bit. So I'm going to do these is select both of these channels, add to a group, right click and group, rename it to pads. And this is just a pad, we don't want it too loud, we're just going to drop it down so we can just about hear it really. Maybe a little bit more. You can hear the lower ones a lot louder. I think that's the samples again, so the higher the samples are in this, on that particular preset, the quieter they got. I'm going to turn the low down and try and match the volumes a little bit. It's not essential to have them bang on. So now we can experiment with this 808. If we bring the release up, so what I've done there is I've just switched the shaper back over to hard and bring the dry weight down a little bit. Just gives it a bit more weight. You can turn the 808 down over here in the channel. Okay, so I think we're going to leave it there. I don't want to drone on too much with each part, so I want to keep each part relatively short if I can manage it. So I'm going to leave it there for today. In part 3, we're going to build a little bit more on these ideas, look at putting a bass in, and maybe a little bit of EQ, compression, trying to make the sounds stand out more. We're going to carve, as you'd say, carve spots in the stereo field for different instruments. The same with the EQ. We're going to make sure everything has its place in the frequency spectrum. So, thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 3.